Kia ora, my name is Ashleigh Martin. I'm a teacher here at Albany Senior High School, and I'm going to be talking about my professional inquiry when it comes to impact projects that I undertook last year. We worked together as a staff to co-design a desired approach that we wanted to take to teaching and learning. That was that we want to work in partnership with our students to deepen their learning. Taking that into account and looking at how I might move my own practice closer towards the desired approach, I looked at what my students were doing in impact projects. I noticed that they were not seeking feedback as often or at all in times. And this was a crisis for me because it meant that, one, they were not working in partnership with me and I wasn't working in partnership with them. And two, it meant that they were not giving themselves the opportunity to deepen their learning, and I wanted to do something about that. So when I was trying to identify my own theories, I was also working with other teachers in my community. I wasn't the only one who had come up with this crisis or identified this crisis. So we sat down and we theorised that, one, students perhaps didn't value impact projects and so didn't want to invest the time in seeking feedback. Two, was that they were a bit scared, shy, nervous about seeking feedback from people who weren't their friends, or even from their friends as well, was another theory. And the other one was that they didn't value feedback, that they didn't think that it could shape their learning or deepen their understanding. Before I tried to shift my practice closer to our desired state, I needed to know where my students were at, and I also needed to know what sort of impact my shift would have on my students. So I created a survey for my students to fill out. The questionnaire asked them things like whether they valued impact projects, whether they found feedback useful, when they used feedback and why, and when they rejected feedback and why. And I also asked them to include an example of a time that they had taken feedback on board and it had helped them and deepened their learning and understanding in their impact project. My theories were that the students didn't value impact projects, two, that they were too shy or too scared to seek feedback, and three, that they didn't value feedback when they did get it. And what the results of the questionnaire showed were that they did value impact. All students said that they valued impact at 4 or 5 out of 5 on a scale. They came back and said that they were seeking feedback in ways that weren't necessarily formalised, which shows that they weren't too shy or scared to seek feedback. They were just doing it in a different way that I hadn't yet considered. And in terms of how much they valued feedback, a lot of them said that they took it on when it was constructive, and most of the time it was. So all of those theories turned out to not be true. So I needed to find out what makes constructive feedback and how it can be communicated in a way that deepens their learning and impact projects. So after sharing some readings and thinkings in our professional learning groups, we found that feedback needed to be constructive rather than critical, in a way that means it's descriptive and explains concretely what needs to happen, what aspects can be improved and why. It shows them how to get to those next steps. we needed to ensure that their feedback would also be formative, so that we were co-designing and in partnership their learning as they were going, so that it could shape their final outcomes for impact projects. Students identified that they valued feedback that aligned with their final product. However, for me, it was also really important to let them know that impact projects is more than just a final tangible product, and that we really value the soft skills that they develop along the way. So we made sure to include feedback that related to those soft skills. The way I decided to shift my practice was by meeting regularly with these students to give them constructive feedback about both their product but also their process. We recorded these conversations and then eventually co-constructed a final evaluation form that included specific wording around both the final product and the soft skills those students had developed along the way. So the outcome of that for my students, the impact for my students, were that they were able to map out their learning journeys much more confidently, including the soft skills that they'd picked up along with the final product that they'd created. Talking to one of the students this year, who completed this last year, he is entering impact projects with a lot more confidence and a lot more of a positive outlook. Knowing that he'd grown and deepened his understanding of himself and the way that he learns, despite not being totally happy with his final product. For me, I really liked the co-constructed evaluation form. It felt like it was a lot more meaningful, and I felt like the students engaged with it a lot more, knowing that they had a say in creating it. So for me this year, it means that my learning from last year has helped me hit the ground running in impact projects. It's built my confidence in how I give feedback on the floor, and the process last year has made me feel more secure in giving feedback, knowing that the students do value it and they do take it on when it's constructive, like we discussed. So it was a good thing.